You're being offboarded, Brett said, tapping his iPad like he was choosing a Spotify playlist and not decapitating someone's career. The room smelled like new carpet and old ambition. He sat there in his stupid linen blend blazer, blue of course, like all these startup clowns wore when they were trying to seem both professional and approachable. His hair had that freshly cut, over-gelled sheen like it was auditioning for a pharmaceutical ad. I'm sorry, what? I asked, not because I didn't hear him, but because my brain was buffering. Offboarded, not fired, not laid off, just offboarded, like a malfunctioning Bluetooth speaker. Nothing personal, he said, flashing me the kind of smile you'd reserve for a neighbor's dog dying. We're flattening the structure. No more vertical silos. You know, cross-functional synergy and all that. He paused to sip his green smoothie, some abomination of kale and protein powder, and gestured vaguely at the HR rep beside him, who looked like she wanted to crawl into the fake ficus in the corner. We think relationship manager roles are, well, outdated, he added, doing air quotes like a YouTuber reviewing toaster ovens. I blinked. Outdated. I'd been with Heliox Systems for 6 years. You know that platform that lets hospitals manage patient data securely across state lines? That was my vendor relationship. I built the damn compliance pipeline from scratch, through 3 security audits, 1 massive AWS outage, and an actual ransomware scare that we smothered before the board even heard about it. And now, I was just expired. I see, I said. My voice didn't crack, I didn't let it. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, that's cold, go ahead and hit that like button. Maybe even subscribe. It really helps out the team who puts these together, and, no joke, it tells the algorithm that you actually care when someone gets screwed sideways by corporate nonsense. Just saying. Anyway, back to Brett. He slid a manila envelope across the table like we were in a spy movie. Inside, my exit paperwork, a laughable severance agreement, and a pre-written LinkedIn post I could feel free to edit announcing I was stepping away to explore new opportunities. It even came with hashtags. #CloudLeader, #grateful for the journey, I shit you not. I signed nothing. Not yet. I stood up, slowly. I looked around the room, nobody met my eyes. Cowards, all of them. People I'd eaten soggy conference sandwiches with, sat through god-awful vendor demos with, even stayed late to help debug billing issues that weren't my job ever, but I did it because the work mattered. Because we mattered. But not anymore. Apparently, I was a relic. Like a fax machine or moral backbone. Brett gave me a nod like he'd just taught a puppy to sit. No hard feelings, right? Nope, I said, and I smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile you give when you're okay. It was the kind of smile you give when you've just remembered something important, something that nobody else in the room knows. See, Brett was wrong about one thing. I wasn't just a relationship manager. I was the named technical contact for every major cloud service Heliox used. Oz, GCP, our compliance dashboard, our SOC2 cert, all of it. My name was on every line, not the company's. Mine, and there were rules, boring, bureaucratic, unsexy rules that said removing the named contact without proper protocol triggers, well, let's call it a chain reaction. The kind that starts with silence, then turns into outage, then contract breach. I'd written those rules. I'd memorized those rules. I walked back to my desk. I didn't cry, didn't slam drawers or pack boxes like some tragic movie scene. I just sat down, logged into the admin portal, and followed the offboarding checklist. My offboarding checklist, the one I'd created. I removed my credentials cleanly. No drama, no notes, then I logged out. I picked up my little desk cactus, one Cheryl from legal gave me after I fixed the contract API last year. I tossed my backup drive into my tote, one of those free conference ones that says digital is the new normal. Gag. And then I walked out. Not one person said goodbye. They just stared at their screens, pretending to work, pretending not to hear the thud of the guillotine behind them. But it's okay, because the real noise, that would come tomorrow. I didn't take much with me. Just the cactus, the tote bag, and the mug that said coffee first, chaos later. Everything else belonged to Heliox, or might as well have. A decade of my life boiled down to one sad little cardboard box, and the knowledge that I'd just been replaced by someone whose greatest achievement was finishing a 6-week Coursera course and marrying the CEO's daughter. People saw me. I know they did, but nobody looked at me. That's how it always goes. You become a ghost the moment you're not useful anymore. I walked past Jake in finance. He flinched like I might ask him for a tissue or a hug or a signed affidavit. Ashley from Ops suddenly discovered something fascinating on her shoelaces. Even Marcus from Legal, who once spent 2 hours drunk crying to me about his divorce at a company retreat, just tightened his AirPods and walked right by. Good, let them squirm. I reached my desk and sat down one last time. Opened the admin dashboard. My fingers knew the path by muscle memory, settings right arrow access control right arrow named roles. It took all of 45 seconds to remove myself from every system Heliox ran on. AWS master account? Cleared. VPN root credentials? Revoked. Cloud Cert Compliance Dashboard? Reassigned to unassigned. The system gave a polite error. Please assign a new technical contact within 48 hours to avoid service disruption. I left it blank. Not because I was being vindictive, because I was being thorough. I clicked confirm on the final provision and paused for a moment, fingers still resting on the mouse. My face felt warm, but I wasn't crying. I wasn't anything, just processing. It felt less like an ending and more like a controlled detonation. One of those demolitions where the building doesn't explode in flames, it just drops straight down into its own footprint, neat and clean. Then I opened Outlook. New message. To Lisa Donnelly, Compliance Manager, North America Cloud Cert Systems, subject, update named contact departure body. Hi Lisa, just wanted to confirm that, as of Thursday, June 6th at 3:45 p.m. ET, I am no longer employed at Heliox Systems. Please update your records accordingly. My credentials have been removed per protocol. All the best, Mara. I reread it once. No extra words, no sarcasm, no bitterness, just the truth. Then I hit send. That's the thing nobody tells you about corporate revenge. If you do it right, it doesn't look like revenge at all. It looks like professionalism. It looks like you're just doing your job, even as you walk away from a minefield with the pins still warm in your hand. I shut the laptop, stood up. Brett was still in the conference room when I passed by. He was laughing at something, probably his own reflection. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and just didn't care. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closed, and for the first time all day I let myself smile, not a big one, not the kind that says I won, just the kind that says I'm not done yet. Outside, the sun was blinding. I stood on the curb for a second, blinking hard. The air smelled like concrete and burnt coffee. Someone was yelling into a phone 2 blocks over. A delivery truck honked. Life still turning. I turned my phone off and dropped it into my tote. No dramatic slamming. No tears. But inside? Oh, inside I was rewinding every little detail of the last 6 years, the audits I led, the documents I signed, the certifications I held alone in my name. And I was calculating the hours left on that 48-hour compliance clock like it was a bomb I'd set in my own apartment just to prove a point. I didn't need to lift a finger. I just needed to wait. It's funny, the things you don't get credit for. No one throws you a cake party for filling out the annual SOC2 control map by yourself. There's no balloon bouquet when you single-handedly get a system back in scope, after some DevOps intern installed a rogue plugin for testing. Nobody claps when you sit through a 4-hour Zoom call with an external auditor explaining why yes, access logs do need to be immutable, and no, a shared Gmail account for root admin is not acceptable just because it's easier. But you know who does notice? The federal compliance watchdogs, the auditors, the vendors. And, most importantly, the clients with 7-figure contracts that live and die by the comfort of a green certification badge that says, "This company takes data security seriously." And I was that badge. Flashback to 3 years ago, I was in a WeWork phone booth with a dying laptop battery and an external auditor on speaker, walking through the chain of custody clause in our SOC2 scope. The guy, nice enough but 3 cups too deep into his own importance, had just asked who at Heliox had final sign-off power for technical access changes to production infrastructure. I didn't hesitate, that's me. He blinked on camera. Just you? Yes, I said. Per our internal policy and vendor agreement, I'm the named technical contact. It was baked into the last compliance cycle after the security incident in 2019. That was the breach no one likes to talk about. The one where a contractor pushed a test patch live on a Friday night and we didn't notice until Monday morning when encrypted patient data was being served without SSL. I'd caught it. I'd fixed it. I'd made damn sure it never happened again. So we wrote the clause, quietly, strategically, buried under a forest of legalese and approval chains. All production infrastructure access revocations must be reviewed and acknowledged by the named technical contact listed in Section 6.1 before changes can be validated. That was me. My name, my signature, my certification account. And now, nobody had thought to remove me properly, not through the vendor's compliance transition process, not through SOC2 required contact replacement form, not through the audit trail Heliox was contractually obligated to maintain. They just offboarded me, like I was a Wi-Fi plan. The real kicker? Every year during the recertification cycle, I'd remind Brett and the other execs that if anything happens to me, meaning if I got hit by a bus or won the lottery, or decided to start a goat farm in Vermont, someone needed to submit an updated contact form within 48 hours or risk triggering an automatic freeze. Brett laughed every single time. He once said, "We're not running NORAD, Mara. Chill." I didn't chill. I documented, I logged, I filed backups. I had receipts for everything. Because if you work in infrastructure long enough, you realize that nobody thanks you when it works, but they blame you the second it doesn't. So you cover yourself. Quietly. Religiously, you become the invisible thread. Every vendor relationship secured by me. Every service agreement approved by me. Every audit trail, every incident report, every password policy, every TLS update, every access control chart with a red asterisk next to my name, primary contact, Mara Jensen. Nobody else even knew how to log into our compliance dashboard. They just pinged me whenever a report was due or a client wanted reassurance. I was their insurance policy, the ghost in the server room. The person who remembered why that 1S3 bucket wasn't supposed to be touched, and what happened the last time someone did. Now I was gone, and the thread snapped. They thought they could cut me loose without checking what I held up. That's the problem with invisible things, they don't seem important until they're not there. Until the ceiling caves in and nobody remembers which beam was load-bearing. I wasn't angry anymore. I was proud, in a way that felt both sad and smug. I had made myself essential in the most boring, unglamorous, irreplaceable way possible. I had become the lock, and Brett had just thrown out the key because it didn't match his aesthetic. Let him find out the hard way. Tick, tick. 2 days after my exit, I was making pancakes in my pajamas when the first little whiff of poetic justice drifted through the air, like the smell of rain on hot asphalt. Only this storm was man-made and marching straight toward a glass-walled conference room full of overconfident idiots with MBA hangovers. A friend from product, let's call her N, texted me with the kind of vague, adrenaline-laced urgency usually reserved for office breakups or surprise inspections. You didn't hear it from me, but they're doing a massive investor demo on Friday. Board plus clients plus some press. They're calling it a visibility summit, Elmau. She followed it with a popcorn gif and then, God bless her, a screenshot of a Slack thread. And there he was, Brett, the sentient haircut, in full digital Napoleon mode. This demo's our moment to show investors we're enterprise ready. Fat has been trimmed, signal over noise, let's Fing deliver. The message had a fire emoji. Of course it did. Another screenshot followed, this one from marketing. Can we update the client dashboard visuals to show 100% uptime? Also add the SOC2 compliance badge back to the footer? Back. I actually choked on my coffee. They were re-adding the badge I had personally configured through a verified API that required active certification, which, as of 48 hours post my departure, was suspended pending contact verification. That badge wasn't just a PNG file. It was live authenticated, meaning the second the demo hit the compliance page, it would do a real-time verification ping, and that ping would fail. I sat back in my kitchen chair, still in my fuzzy socks, and laughed, not loud, not manic, just a single, stunned exhale of disbelief, like watching someone wipe down a gas pump with a lit cigarette. The irony here was cosmic. They were using my work, my infrastructure, my procedures, my carefully tended automation to fake the image of resilience, and all of it was one heartbeat away from imploding in real time. Let's talk about that dashboard for a second. It wasn't just a toy UI. That thing pulled live metrics from every part of our backend: latency, uptime, compliance status, vendor sync health. It was my idea, born from the pain of too many meetings where we'd promised performance we couldn't prove. I built it to give clients transparency. And now, it was going to hand them the truth on a silver tray. During the most high-stakes dog and pony show of Brett's tiny, smug life, my phone buzzed again. N, are you okay? I'm honestly pissed. You built this thing. I typed, then deleted, then typed again. Me, oh, I'm fine, just curious, did anyone reassign me as named contact in the cloud platform? N, ooh, what's that exactly? They didn't know, they had no idea. They thought this system ran on buzzwords and espresso shots. They thought infrastructure was just background noise you muted when it got boring. And now they were walking into a live investor demo, broadcast over Zoom, screens shared, dashboards glowing on a foundation held together with expired credentials and undocumented assumptions. The digital equivalent of building a skyscraper and forgetting to screw in the bolts. Brett kept posting in Slack, full of pep rally energy. Big day coming, no margin for error. Even posted a meme, while Coyote running off a cliff, legs spinning midair, still grinning before gravity remembered he existed. They were all still grinning. But gravity? Oh, she was lacing up her boots. The pieces were in motion. The countdown had started. And nobody, not Brett, not legal, not the panic-sweating intern trying to refresh the compliance badge before Friday, had any clue that the fat they trimmed was the one holding the damn thing together. I didn't need revenge, I just needed time. Subject line, quick question on cloud cert configs. It hit my inbox at 7:04 a.m. I was halfway through a walk, sun barely up, just me, a half-dead Fitbit, and the calming thought that somewhere in the Heliox building, Brett was probably color-coding a slide deck with the same intensity most people reserve for open-heart surgery. I paused on the sidewalk, thumb hovering over the email. It was from a junior analyst in finance. Fresh out of undergrad, probably still thought Slack reactions counted as workplace engagement. The tone was soft, deferential, like he was asking me to bless a budget request, not save their collective asses. Hi Mara, hope you're doing well. Sorry to bother you post-departure, but I was just combing through some settings for Friday's demo and noticed a few toggles in Cloud Cert I didn't recognize. Would love a quick sanity check if you have a sec, nothing urgent, totally fine if not. Best, the smiley face was doing a lot of work, bless him. I stared at the screen, then locked the phone without responding. No malice, no smugness, just discipline. If I replied, even just to say sorry, I'm no longer authorized to advise, I'd be implying some kind of residual support role. and that was the last thing I needed. Not because I didn't like the kid, because right now, silence was more powerful than clarity. And besides, I wasn't the one with responsibilities anymore. They made that very clear. Instead, I turned my phone off, popped into a coffee shop, and ordered a cinnamon roll big enough to break treaties. Because somewhere, deep in the data centers and compliance servers of the universe, a tiny switch had just flipped. CloudCert's internal systems had detected a status change, named contact terminated. And with that change, a series of very boring but very consequential automations began to unfold. First, the SOC2 watchdog AI flagged the account for inactivity and removal of multi-factor credentials. Then, it dispatched an alert to the compliance node, triggering a contact invalidation protocol. That protocol sends a notice to Heliox's account administrator, which, hilariously, still pending reassignment, and begins a 48-hour countdown to suspend dashboard access, certificate verification API connections, and most importantly, live compliance sync for all externally facing dashboards. If no verified contact is reassigned within that window, the system locks out non-compliant accounts. Automatically, no humans required, no buttons to click, just policy playing out like clockwork. It was a domino I'd helped design during our last audit. Why? Because we had to. The certification body required a guarantee that no single point of human failure could cause prolonged exposure or breach. Irony being, when I became the single point of contact, I was also the one who built the failsafe for losing me. The security paradox of every good system: protect against yourself. And now here we were, 48 hours from total platform lockout. The demo, scheduled for hour 47. They were so close. Close enough to taste victory, close enough to slap a new round of funding on their slide decks and strut into boardrooms like tech gods. But underneath that glossy veneer, underneath Brett's stupid pep talks and just push the badge live again Slack commands, was a terminal countdown. Tick tick, I could already imagine the meeting where they'd discover it. Probably Thursday night. Some poor soul pulling a pre-demo systems check, refreshing the dashboard and seeing that horrible little red banner. Compliance status, invalid. Contact unverified. Access suspended in 6H12M. There'd be panic, of course, questions, calls, emails, none of which I'd answer. Because this wasn't personal, this wasn't a tantrum, this was gravity, in motion. Back at home, I pulled up the Heliox status page. Still green, still smug, for now. Thursday morning came wrapped in corporate delusion and flavored sparkling water. Heliox's internal Slack lit up like a Christmas tree. Everyone pretending not to panic. Everyone acting like they weren't about to walk into a high-speed collision with a wall labeled "You fired the wrong person." My phone buzzed again, bless N, still riding the gossip train from the inside. Screenshot #1, Brett's official announcement. Big day tomorrow, demo starts at 10 a.m. sharp. Zoom link and calendar. Board, investors, a few key clients including Global Med. Let's show them why Heliox is the future of secure, scalable cloud infrastructure. Then a second line, bolded, all hands on deck. Please make sure dashboards are refreshed and client portal is stable before EOD today. I nearly snorted coffee through my nose. Client portal stable? Buddy, your client portal is currently dangling from a compliance cliff by a frayed Ethernet cable, and the only person who knew how to reattach it is sitting in fuzzy socks eating oatmeal. Screenshot #2 was the real gift, though. Someone, probably trying to lighten the mood, had posted a meme of a dog in a burning room with the caption, "This is fine." Brett's reply? Lol. Just pray AWS doesn't crash. Face with tears of joy, just pray AWS doesn't crash. I had to get up from my kitchen table and take a lap around the block. It was too perfect, too poetic. He still thought the biggest threat was Amazon's uptime. Still thought infrastructure was some faceless beast that either worked or didn't, as if it ran on magic or caffeine or good vibes. He had no idea the real threat wasn't Amazon. It was me. The absence of me. Because right now, in some fluorescent lit room where marketing was triple-checking slide transitions and legal was printing NDAs for the press preview, a compliance time bomb was ticking so loud it might as well have been a damn metronome. Less than 24 hours remained on the CloudCert lockout countdown. The system, my system, was marching steadily toward total revocation. No manual override. No, wait, I didn't mean it. Minute that clock hit 0, the system would treat Heliox as non-compliant, and any API calls or dashboard loads that touched the SOC2 verification endpoint would return the same 3-word slap to the face: access suspended, contact unverified. That meant no uptime validation, no dashboard metrics, no client portal logins, no compliance badge on the demo footer, just red errors everywhere. And here's the best part. Brett had scheduled it for 10 a.m. sharp, which, thanks to the exact moment they terminated me on Tuesday, meant the lockout would trigger mid-demo. Not before, not after. During, I imagine some DevOps guy tried to resubmit the verification token earlier in the day. Maybe they thought it just expired. Maybe someone clicked the wrong thing. Maybe someone even tried to call CloudCert support, only to hit that polite automated wall of sorry, we require a named contact on file to process this request. Too late, I had to give it to Brett. The man had inadvertently created the perfect stage for his own public unmasking. Everyone who mattered would be watching. The board, the investors, and most deliciously, Global Med, a client that accounted for nearly 40% of Heliox's annual revenue and had a very explicit clause in their MSA requiring uninterrupted SOC2 compliance. They didn't want promises, they wanted proof. And the second that proof blinked offline, so did their money. By noon Thursday, N texted again. They're scrambling. Something about error messages in the dev environment and the badge failing to refresh. I replied with a single word, interesting. I spent the rest of the day quietly cleaning my apartment, lighting a candle, and queuing up my favorite playlist. Not for drama, just for atmosphere. Because when a storm like this is coming, you don't run. You open the window, let it in, sip your tea, and listen for the thunder. 10 o'clock a.m. sharp. The Zoom tile matrix lit up like a chessboard on fire. Investors in tailored blazers. Board members with professionally blurred backgrounds. Global Med's entire executive team, front and center, cameras on, expressions taught with the kind of cordial disinterest only eight-figure clients can afford. The mood was polite, expectant, and utterly unaware that a digital cliff stood inches from their feet. Heliox's intro slide filled the screen, scalable, secure, seamless. 3 lies dressed as adjectives. Brett adjusted his mic and smiled like a man who just found the last parking spot at a wine bar. Good morning, everyone, he began, voice coated in charisma he hadn't earned. We're thrilled to show you the next evolution of Heliox's enterprise-grade infrastructure and how we're redefining compliance at scale. I nearly gagged into my tea. He clicked to the second slide, some bloated bar chart of quarterly growth, no doubt inherited from a spreadsheet I built back when numbers still had to be accurate. Then he pivoted smoothly into his performance monologue. Words like resilience, zero latency edge deployments, and audit-ready posture flew out of his mouth with all the conviction of a child reciting the Pledge of Allegiance for pizza. Behind him, the dashboard pulsed to life. Uptime charts, API load speeds, user session rates, all piped through the front end like it was business as usual. Only it wasn't, because I knew what was coming next. The demo sequence was scripted. It had to be too many moving parts, too many egos watching. Right around slide 7, Brett was scheduled to switch to the live client portal to show real-time compliance transparency. They'd tested it dozens of times, but not since Tuesday, not since me. Brett's cursor floated confidently across the screen and clicked the browser tab labeled Client Portal Live. Up popped the familiar login screen. For 2 seconds, everything seemed fine. Then it happened. A slight delay, a blink, like the system hiccuped. Then freeze, every metric widget locked. The CPU usage bar stopped moving. The uptime gauge hung at 99.97% unblinking. The compliance badge, designed to ping the Cloud Cert API every 60 seconds, spun like it couldn't decide whether to lie or crash. Then, just like that, blackout. The screen went completely gray. No errors, no messages, just silence, like the platform itself had forgotten how to exist. I pictured Brett staring at his screen, mouse frozen, lips parting into that awful forced smile people use when they stub their toe in public. I imagined the investors leaning forward, the board furrowing brows, someone at Global Med tilting their head ever so slightly like a golden retriever who just heard a strange whistle. Then the questions started. Is that a connection issue? Are we seeing cached data? Where's the uptime validation? Was this pre-recorded? And finally, the sentence that cracked the illusion clean in half. Where's the compliance badge? You could feel the tension shift even through secondhand texts from N. Brett just said, hang on, refreshing the page now. He did, twice. Nothing came back, no charts, no metrics, no badge, just a soft, cold message, access suspended. Contact unverified. Please refer to certification administrator. Cue the silence. Real silence. The kind you only hear when someone important just realized they've truly, irrevocably screwed up in front of people whose names appear on legal documents. Brett stammered. I didn't hear the words, but I could imagine. Just a temporary glitch, 1 sec, we'll get that back up shortly. But nothing loaded. And with every passing second, that empty gray portal became a spotlight, and Brett, just a deer trying to outblink a semi-truck. At home, I set my tea down. I didn't smile. Not yet, because this was the moment before the reveal, and I wanted to savor it. The Zoom window twitched. Just as Brett opened his mouth to stammer out another buzzword band-aid, something about third-party latency syncs, a new tile popped into view. No one had invited this face. No one was expecting it. But there it was, clear as a full moon through broken blinds, the calm, professionally unimpressed expression of Melissa Tran, Senior Compliance Liaison at Cloud Cert Systems. She didn't blink, didn't fumble, just unmuted her mic with the graceful finality of a guillotine blade. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the interruption, she said, her voice cutting through the awkward static like a scalpel. Cloud Cert has initiated an emergency suspension of Heliox's enterprise dashboard services due to a compliance lockout. Nobody moved. She continued, clipboard steady in frame. The named contact of record for all active certifications resigned earlier this week. Per protocol, no updated contact was submitted within the required 48-hour window. As a result, verification endpoints have been disabled, and compliance integrations have been placed in suspended status. Gasps, actual gasps, like someone had just pulled the fire alarm in the Louvre. Brett turned pale, not metaphorically, actually pale. His mouth hung open like he'd forgotten what words were. Somewhere on screen, an investor furrowed their brow so hard it looked like their webcam had a wrinkle filter. The CEO, David Langston, a man who once spent 15 minutes explaining how he leveraged gamified synergies in Q3, leaned in so close to his camera that all you could see was his left eye and a confused frown. "Wait, what?" he said. Melissa didn't flinch. "Your SOC 2 certification is no longer active. You're currently out of compliance with the standards listed in your master service agreements with all relevant clients, including Global Med." I almost applauded from my kitchen table. I almost stood up and slow clapped with a pancake in one hand, because there it was. The truth, finally, publicly, not whispered in some backroom Slack thread, not buried in a ticket, but said out loud, on the record, during their precious Visibility Summit livestream. Everything I'd protected, the certs, the uptime, the legal safety net, had collapsed in 30 seconds. Not because of malice, not because of sabotage, because they forgot I was the lock. You don't yank the keystone out of the arch and expect the structure to keep standing. But that's what they'd done. They mistook invisible for irrelevant. Thought I was just another middle manager with a Google Calendar full of vendor calls. Thought relationship manager meant lunch meetings and holiday cards. They didn't realize I was the thread that kept the damn fabric from unraveling. And now they were naked, on stage, mid-sentence. "Can we resolve this now?" Brett managed to croak, his voice 2 octaves higher than normal. Melissa shook her head, polite but unbothered. "I'm sorry, but without a formally submitted transition of credentials and a verified chain of custody, you're required to maintain the lockout until recertification is complete. Given the scale of your platform, that process typically takes 2 to 4 weeks. A week, 2 weeks, 4, that demo was supposed to launch a funding round. They had pitch decks already loaded, contracts pre-drafted, a press email set to blast at noon. And now they couldn't prove compliance, couldn't show performance, couldn't load their own damn dashboards. Legal started scrambling. You could see it, one of the in-house lawyers flipping through a printed contract, the frantic flick of pages so loud it got picked up by their mic. The board went dead silent. Someone from Global Med asked, "So does this mean the SLA is void?" Melissa answered with the same tone someone might use to explain gravity to a toddler. "Yes, your contract with Global Med is now technically in breach." Technically, deliciously technically. I closed my laptop, not out of boredom, because I didn't need to see the rest. The collapse had started. Brett's empire of platitudes and PowerPoint slides was crumbling in real time, and the irony was almost romantic. They'd built their moment around a lie, bulletproof compliance, seamless infrastructure, zero risk, and it all evaporated the moment they removed the one person who actually knew how any of it worked. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to send a single email. I had built the foundation. All I had to do was walk away and let it fall. They found the clause around 2:13 p.m., tucked inside Exhibit G of the Global Med MSA, between the usual noise about arbitration and jurisdiction, was the line I'd helped draft 3 years earlier after an audit nearly derailed onboarding. SOC 2 certification must remain active and uninterrupted for the duration of the agreement. Any lapse exceeding 12 hours shall constitute a material breach and authorize the client to suspend payments and terminate services without penalty. 12 hours. Heliox's systems had already been dark for 5. Global Med's GC flagged at mid-call. No shouting, no grandstanding, just a quiet, methodical voice saying, "Section 7.3, right there. This qualifies." That was the moment the walls started to breathe. The CFO asked, "So what does that mean in real terms?" And the answer piped in like a drone strike. "It means all future payments are on hold, effective immediately." Boom, that sound, that wasn't just the crash of one deal. That was the entire illusion of Heliox's reliability collapsing like a rigged game finally losing power. Because once one whale client pauses the money, the others start sniffing, asking questions, pulling thread. And Heliox's sweater was already unraveling. By 6:40 p.m., my phone buzzed again and, bless her persistent soul, sending a screenshot of Slack's #finance war room channel. Investor group out, confirmed via Langston. They pulled everything, not just new money, everything. The entire bridge round gone, vaporized, a ghost on a spreadsheet. Brett didn't post again after 4:00 p.m. His last message, a question, "Can someone loop in Cloud Cert again?" I think there's a manual override. There wasn't. There never had been, because the override was me, and they fired me. I didn't cry, didn't cheer. I just sat in my kitchen in the same chair I'd read the first termination email in, cradling my coffee mug and watching the fallout ripple across LinkedIn, Slack leaks, and panicked texts from people who hadn't said a word to me since the offboarding. There was something beautifully silent about it. No explosions, no screaming, just to collapse. The kind of ruin that only happens when the wrong people think they're too important to understand the quiet work being done behind the scenes. That's what they never got. I wasn't a glorified assistant. I wasn't an expense center or nice to have on vendor calls. I was the lock. And the second they forgot that, I became the consequence. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but I didn't mind. The emails were coming in now: recruiters, compliance directors, CTOs from companies I'd never even heard of. Subject lines like "saw what happened, want to talk," and "we're building a real infrastructure team. You'd lead it." But the one that made me tilt my head and grin? From board member Heliox at Outlook.com. Subject: "Can we talk?" No punctuation. No signature. Just 5 desperate words sent after the dust settled and the bodies were counted. I didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, I reached for the coffee pot, topped off my mug, and stared out the window at a quiet, blue October sky. Because when it's done right, revenge doesn't need a victory lap. You just remove the keystone and let gravity do the rest. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.